Happy Halloween. Um, as a present, I decided to read the one Halloween story I have written, and I hope you all enjoy it. Cogi'yim by Stephen T. DeMarino. All copyright is preserved. Shy walked with the apple in his hand. Such a small thing, he thought. To those who live planet-side, they throw these at each other. They throw away the one slightly rotten or blemished. He stared in wonder at the little bit of organic material in his hand. It had come 90 million miles to be cupped in his soft fingers. All of his money that had been saved from recycling, working as a cleaner on the freighters, and picking up at his father's bar had all gone into this apple and his three mates in the bag at his side. The young boy lowered his nostrils to just above the skin and breathed in. The scent of the skin flowed through him, full of life and sugar. His heart raced in anticipation of the look on his mother's face when he brought this bounty home. Not wanting anything to happen to it, especially here on the busy dock, Shy took one last longing look at his prize, and then carefully placed it in the satchel and sealed the magnetic flap. Stepping up from the shadow of the dock seal of the freighter Nolan's Folly, the youngster eased himself into the flow of beings making their way along the narrow strip of Phobos Station's upper ring. Being small for his age, Shy found it easy to wend his way through legs, motivators, and pedipale. Most of the humans, androids, and Shy Halub never noticed him as he dodged between them. The few beings who did take note of him usually only saw a shock of red hair and an open face dented with dimples. His short limbs and childish mane belied a strength that came from being a hard worker, pushed into it from early years. He attended school when the freighter convoys were out, but worked when the ships flowed between Mars and Earth. It made for an unusual, irregular school year, but life on the tiny station was based on the ebb and flow of commerce coming from the mother planet. Walking along row 3 until he got to bulkhead 7, where the commercial docking ports ended and the military section began, he waved to the guard on duty and stepped onto the lift going down to the next level. His apples thumped gently, comfortingly, against his leg as he stepped out onto the crew level. Right off the shaftway were the Shy Halub dorms. Shy always found himself fascinated with the slow-moving aliens and the different ways that they did things. Their long, tripartite pedipale supported a torso that was not functionally that much different than humans. That their arms terminated in a tentacle-like appendage rather than fingers did not make them any less or more different than some humans were to each other, at least in Shy's mind. He noticed many of the dorms had children in front of them, all working on something. Strolling along, he noticed that most of the Halub kids were building a similar figurine at each airlock. Many were using recycled oxygen tubes or water and food containers, mixed with bits of wire and conduit and other oddments. All had similarities: a roundish head with painted black eyes, gaping teeth, and an orange coloration. Bodies varied from human normal to something approaching Halubian normal, to things out of dreams or nightmares, with appendages seemingly randomly attached at intervals to the bodies. At the third dorm, he saw his classmate, Cogi'yim. The sexuality of the Chai Halub was somewhat complicated, as they actually had 4 sexes, all of which were involved in the birthing process. But Shai generally thought of Cogi'yim as female. She was busy concentrating on her task, and her visual receptors didn't rise to take him in until he was right next to her. "Hiya, Gwynny, what you working on?" Shai was careful not to smile with teeth showing, as this tended to freak the Halubians out. The whole concept of a tooth-ridden smile being a friendly thing was quite foreign to them, as on their homeworld, anything that showed its teeth was about to try to eat them. Cogi'yim cocked her head, all 6 eyes blinking, and brought her tentacles up to show Shy her project. The head was not fully attached and rolled off the back of the figurine. A nudge brought it up to be in line with the body so that her human friend could see the colorful paint job that adorned it. The skin around her face was a muted blue, a sign of being happy or content. Greens were bad, Shy knew, which meant the Halubian was mad or upset. Cogi'yim's figurine had green circles around the 6 lurid eyes that she had painted on its orange and white head. It had black, snaggly teeth and a crooked grimace spread across the whole front of the figure's head. As he watched, her tentacles deftly attached the head with a few touches from an epoxy pen, and the orange pate was permanently attached to the purple-clad body. There were 4 legs and 4 arms, 2 ending in hands and 2 ending in tentacles. The figure wore what appeared to be a jumpsuit, all an extremely bright purple, with dark red shoes. "Neat, Gwynny. What is it?" Shy asked, his head cocked on one side, as he took in the fantastic creation. Hard to Shy. Cogi'yim is the whole word. Scare Junkman, maybe? Gwingahai's hands blinked in a pattern, outside, middle, inside. A sign that Shy had come to understand was her way of saying she was unsure. He looked it over and realized where he had seen something similar. He pulled out his deck and fingered in a search. Turning it around, he showed it to Gwynny. "Is it supposed to be something like this?" On his tablet were old pictures of haymen and scarecrows. Yes, scarecrow, yes. Neat, Shy." Her tentacles reached out to tilt the tablet to get a better angle for her vision, her humming as she fingered her own search on the tablet, bringing up the history and imagery of scarecrows in the public database. Gah. Yes, similar. Concept same, to scare off hostile life, yes. For us, much like your Hallows Eve, the next 3 nights coming. Spacious! That sounds interesting, Gwynny. The freighters are all mostly heading out, so I would be free if the humans can come check it out. The young Pelubian's skin tone changed to yellow, and her eyes blinked outside in a very rapid pattern, something Shy had never seen in combination before, so he didn't know quite what to make of it. "This child will ask of its progenitors whether it is allowed. Gwyn, I would like that if it can be possible. I will ask Shy." "Neat. Hey, I almost forgot. I got some apples from the freighter from Earth. The Folly. You want to see one?" "I can't give you one, sorry, Gwynny. They are for my folks and my auntie, but you can check one out if you want. I don't know that they would be good eating for you anyways. It's Earth food." Shy pulled out one of his prized acquisitions for his friend to examine. She leaned her head in close and brought all 6 eyes to bear on the shiny red fruit. The Shy Halub child brought her chin up over it, and Shy could see the row of tiny nostrils under her jawline open up to take a sniff. Interesting. Smells not good for Gwingahai. Interesting, but you are right. The aroma is not pleasing to senses. I agree it may not be good eating for Chai Halub. It is very pleasing to the eye, however. Like the color. She spread her arms wide in a gesture of acceptance and approval. Shy smiled a close-lipped smile back at her and put the precious fruit back in his satchel. "I gotta spin, Gwynahai. Let me know. I would love to come." Shy put his hand up with fingers spread, 2 together and the other 2 in thumbs spread wide. She matched with her own 3 tentaculars, point to point. "It will be pleasant to see you again, Shy." The Halubian's eye rings glowed a pale blue, and all her eyes were looking at him as he sauntered off. Once he was out of sight, she returned her attention to the figure before her. The one orb continued to look at the hallway where Shy had disappeared for some time afterwards. Later, Gwingahai came to the communal feeding area, her inner eye rings a muted blue, thinking about her human friend, while her outer ones were pale yellow with concern over talking with her progenitors. All 4 of her parents were in the room, attending to tasks as they prepared for dinner. "Gawai go hanai. May this one ask a question of its progenitors?" Winnie put her arms in position of patient, submissive questioning. The massive Ur-male turned in response. While he and Hubble go hanai ran the family together, it was traditional for the Ur-male to be supreme in the family, hence her asking Gawai first before the other parents. "Yes, my progeny. What is it you would ask of us?" He stretched his tentacles in an inclusive yet ironic manner, his eye rings the pale blue of placid amusement. Hulba, Malala Loahai, and Du Tui Mahai all came together to make a comfortable wall in front of their child. The massive males bookended the more slender but far faster females, and all 24 orbits looked in her direction. Gwingahai looked at her family and did not feel intimidated as a human child might, faced with 4 adults staring at them. Instead, she made instead she felt a massive wave of love, partially driven by the pheromones coming off of her mother's. She knew, but chemistry did not explain it all. Winnie was aware, as she was the foursome's first child, that they were anxious for her success, but they always handled it with a communal spirit and a gentle yet firm touch. Their daughter was usually left feeling as though she had been especially blessed by the Creator to have been given such parentage. Despite this, she was a touch nervous about asking this particular question. Wingahai's human friend Shai Sorensen has asked this one if they may attend the Festival of Shades. There was a low rumble from Gawai, and gentle murmurings from the and Ub females as well. Only Hulba stayed quiet. Winnie could see each of the parents looking at each other with their uppermost orbits, attempting to reach a consensus before they even spoke. It was Malala Lohai who spoke for them all. She set her body slightly in front in a body position of comfort, pedipalpi low, narrow, and bent, and her tentaculars wrapped again back around her own wrists as her arms reached for her child. She pulled Gwingahai to her chest and set her chin atop her daughter's head. We worry, Gwingahai, for our progeny. It is a failing, but we, the Chai Halup who have come to this place, have not informed our human neighbors about what is to come. We had hoped indeed that this mass might pass us by, that our problem might not be able to reach us this far, so we did not mention it, so not to cause concern. The younger member of the family stiffened slightly, her upper orbits looking up at the Ub female, who held her lovingly. Wingahai's orbits began to change to a purple of questioning and fear. Malala turned two baleful eyes towards Hulba, the skin around them glowing a dangerous green, even as the other four stayed a deep blue in affection for the progeny that stayed in her embrace. Hulba, for his own part, twisted his mouthpiece in nervousness, all of his skin flushing pale, almost white with embarrassment and shame. Dutuimahai looked at her two mates and asked, her own eyes becoming a gentle green. What has happened? Why is there discord here? Should we ask our progeny to wait elsewhere while we discuss this? Gawai turned his massive bulk towards his lesser male partner. This one knows what this is about. Our mate has failed to inform our progeny as to what is about to occur when the planets align properly in the next rotation. Gwingahai has not been told of why we have the children make their own Cogi'yim, other than it is tradition, a festival. He has sought to spare Gwingahai's feelings. Perhaps Halub have become too much near Human. Such behavior would have been uncommon on the homeworld. The Ub male lowered all of his orbits to the floor, all of them glowing with a pale green. His skin had become a nearly iridescent white. His pedipalpi trembled, as though he were about to collapse to the floor. This one is ashamed. Hulba has failed its family, most especially its progeny. I sought only not to scare Gwingahai needlessly. The senior male reached out with his tentacles and lightly slapped Hulba across his skull ridge. You are forgiven, my mate, since intent was good, though method was poor. He turned to his daughter, her eyes purple with concern and fear. She had never seen such behavior from her parents before. Be at peace, our progeny, be at peace. Gawai reached out with his other arm, stroking his daughter's face, one tentacle gently circling her chin. His upper eyes closed, the middle one stared off into a place that was not there, as the lower ones continued to look at her, the skin around them fading from a pale green towards blue. They stayed like that a moment, the four parents slowly began to reach out for one another, tentacles intertwining. Even Hulba, though reluctant, accepted the comfort in touching. They formed a close huddle around their progeny, each touching each other, but with their heads leaned in to touch their child. Gwingahai reveled in the warm smell of her parents. Their breath upon her made her feel as though all was proper with the world, and all would continue to be right. Gawai and Du rumbled together, their sonic humming making the floor vibrate. Soon Hulda and Malala took up the hum as well. A decision had been made, consensus had been reached. Outside the circle, Gwenga High's Cogi'yim looked on, its leeringly painted smile seeming to approve. It was the next shift when the door rang at Shai's family's dorm. He was busy trying to solder some connections on a valve cleaner for the ladies down the hall, so his mother answered the door. Aunt Serena was busy scanning news articles on her deck, pretty much ignoring the world, and mostly her odd little nephew. Greetings, gracious parent of Shai Sorensen. Is that one perhaps available? Looking over his shoulder, he could see that Gwynnie had her pedipelli bent low in a near bow. Yes, Gwenga, come in. He is working on something in the living room. Shai's mom moved to one side to let the little Holubian in. Her wide frame moved deftly among the human-shaped furniture to arrive at Shai's side, where he was putting the last connection on the vacuum pump of the cleaner. Hey, Gwynnie, what's spinning? You asked me about the event. My progenitors have given permission for human attendance. Neat. When? Shai turned to his friend, noting for the first time how nice the little Holubian smelled. Her orbits taking in everything around her, she responded in as distracted a tone as Shai had ever heard from her. Yes, tomorrow night, Shai. Something wrong, Gwenga? No. This one never really realized just how different your dorms are than ours, how different your lives are. Her eyes were pale yellow, swilling with coruscating blue. How do you mean? Shai asked. For instance, this one sees separate rooms for different functions, where in the Holubian section there is one communal room usually, other than for bodily functions. All else is done in one room. We move things as needed for the function of the moment. Oh, well, sounds different, that's for sure. The young human smiled at his friend and held his arms in approximation of an acceptance stance. When should I show up? Gwingahai blinked all 6 orbits at once, her orbits with their pretty blue rings around them now. Her tentacles were twining in and amongst themselves in such a way that Shai was astounded they didn't end up in knots. This one will come here to walk you over if that is acceptable, Shai Sorensen. Yes, that would be full grav. Looking forward to it, Gwynnie. Without thought, he reached forward in human fashion to give Gwingahai a hug. For the Holubian's part, she was freaked out at first, concerned she was being assaulted without provocation, but soon understood that this was along the lines of a ridge rub that the Shai Holub used between each other, a sign of comfort and friendship. She tentatively put her arms and tentacles around Shai's torso, exploring the odd sensation of alien flesh commingling with hers. After a moment, realizing that it may have made his friend uncomfortable, Shai disengaged himself from the hug, put his fingers tight together, making little triangles with them and placing the tips near his eyes. He was trying to copy an informal form of apology. Gwingahai was so touched by the gesture, she felt her heart begin to flutter in an unfamiliar pattern. The little Chai Hulub's eyes were such a deep blue, it seemed to him that her orbits were swimming in minuscule lakes. There is no need for one to apologize, Shai Sorensen. It was acceptable for one to act as one did, though for Gwingahai, it might take some getting used to. As you put it, we are tight. Her mouth parts clacked gently together, her version of a smile as she gently stroked Shai's arm. Spinning, the young human responded enthusiastically. All right, then. I will see you tomorrow night. Do I need to bring anything? It is traditional for one arriving for a formal visit to bring a gift for the progenitors of the one being visited. Food is acceptable, but a gift of art or displayed skill is of greatest value. Until tomorrow. With a low dip, Gwingahai backed out from the room and towards the door. Shai's mother stepped out from the kitchen and hit the door release for the little Holubian. Goodbye, Gwingahai, she smiled, wiping protein flour from her hands. A good evening to you as well, progenitor of Shy. Gwenny touched her ridge with her left hand and moved out the door. Do you want any apple pie? I just made it fresh, Shy's mother asked. No, thank you, Mrs. Sorensen. Apples are not good for Holubian digestion. Receive my gratitude for the offer, however. Shy's mom smiled at her son's friend. Very well, then. That will leave all the more for Mr. Sorensen when he comes home. Bye, Gwenny. See you tomorrow, Shy called from the living room as his friend left. The next evening, the youngster was aflutter with anticipation. He had finished the valve cleaner for the ladies down the hall, and then proceeded to work hard to make something as a gift for Gwenny's family. He hoped that she would like it, since it had taken him most of the day to finish it in time. Shy had even skipped half of school, which his mother had been unaware of, to scrounge for parts. Finally finishing about an hour before his friend was to arrive, he wrapped the present in an iridescent film that was to be used as part of a solar reflector array. Just as he was finished with sealing the wrapping, the door chimed. I'm heading out with Gwenny, Mom. I'll be back late. Shy's mother poked her head out from the kitchenette. Now, best behavior, son. You remember your present? Shy waved it in her direction on his way out the door. I love you. Have a good time. See you tonight. Shy came to the airlock and hit the button that undogged it. Gwingahai was standing there, a sash around her middle and a cloth cap on her skull ridge. Shy blinked in surprise. It was the first time he recalled having seen a Chai-Halub wear any clothing other than work-related tool belts and the like. Gwenny noted his surprise and gave a little spin on her three-pedipale. Approve? She asked. Yeah, sure, Shy responded brightly. With that, the two adolescents headed down the corridor towards the Halub section. Gwingahai noted with some pleasure that Shy had cast off his usual done work clothes and was wearing a brightly colored suit, yellow with purple trim, that set nicely with the dark olive tones of his skin. He was still, however, wearing his dock boots, but appeared to have made an effort to shine them up some. All in all, she thought her human companion looked very nice. As they came to the entrance of her home, the nervousness that Gwingahai had been suppressing came roaring like a tide, leaving her hearts beating asymmetrically. Gawai Gohanai came to the door. His bulk, while not much taller than Shy, made him come across as much, much bigger. Welcome, Shy Sorensen, guest of my progeny. The male bowed slightly, all six of his orbits taking in the young human. Be welcome. Shy responded as Gwenny had taught him, making a slight bow in response, holding up his hand with the three middle fingers together, pinky and thumb out wide, and the other hand on his hip, a gesture of gratefulness, of thanks. I look forward to it, progenitor of my friend. Gawai rumbled gently, his mouth parts clacking in a slight chuckle. Come in, Shy, come in. The first thing that the young human noticed walking in was the entrances to the Chai-Halubian dorms were freight doors, wide and square, not tall and rectangular like the residences in the human sector. Second was the deep, warm smell of Halubian that permeated the entire room. Shy likened it to the smell of roasted soy nuts that his mother would bring home from the commissary. The room was big. He could tell it was a former freight hold by its open nature. The furniture was also strange, just trapezoidal blocks of differing heights. They had swirls of color painted or etched on them, and ran from low and wide, just about knee height, to narrow and taller than he was. Shy stood in the room, and he watched as one of Gwingahai's parents lowered themselves onto one of the low and wide trapezoids, which he realized had 3 sides, not 4, as he had first thought. Malala Lohai, Shy learned her name later, was slicing up some root tuber and dipping it in a brown sauce that smelled lovely, using one of the mid-sized trapezoids for a workspace. Gwingahai lightly stroked his shoulder to get his attention. This one wishes to introduce. Come. She curled her tentacle in a come-hither manner not unlike one any human girl would do in the same situation. He brought out his homemade model of the Halubian cruiser that had brought the first colonists to Mars. which drew many expressions of admiration from Gwynny's family. Huldah in particular seemed fascinated with the pipework Shy had done and the soldering job on the mock thrusters. After the tornado of names, including her parents and 3 or 4 other non-attached folks who were attending, Gwingahai's other friends who had come by, Shy felt drained. His mind was a giant pile of soft syllables, with Chihalabian names floating around in there like chubby tourists in zero gravity. He stepped outside the door for a moment to get not exactly fresh air, but different air. Being a curiosity was taxing after a while. As he stood in the shaftway, Shy noticed the figurines were all outside each airlock door now, sitting in a waiting position, arms and legs akimbo, as though expecting to get up and run at any moment. The variety of them was neat, he thought, as he walked a couple of doors up the way, looking at the different scarecrows. Some had orange heads like Gwynny's, while others had white or green heads. Most had at least 2 arms and legs, but many had 3 like a Chai-Halub. A few had Shy shaking his head as there were 4, 5, or even in one bizarre case, 8 legs. Most had the 2 arms common to both races, but a few had 3 or 4. Most had a roundish head, painted eyes, and toothy grimaces, mostly in some type of ghastly smile or other open-mouthed expression. As he stood there admiring, he noticed something out of the corner of his eye. Wrongness. Something that should not be there. It was the only way that Shy could conceive of to describe it. Not so fully formed as a shadow or what he thought a ghost might look like. Rather, a disruption. Distortion of the reality where it existed. When he turned to look, he realized there were many, joining in gathered in the joining places of the shaftway. Fear came over him. Whatever they were could sense him, could feel him. Their shapeless figures began to move in his direction. He backed away towards his friend's home, the phantasms following. Noiseless, boneless movements gliding their forms across the deck plates. Shy's back ran into the frame around the door, spine stinging with the impact. His eyes grew wide, trying to see what he knew was there in front of him, unable to focus upon the distortion that reached for his flesh. Limbs locked into immobility as the interface between him and reality began to shred. The very bits of it that made up his consciousness of the human being known as Shy Sorensen began to fracture, to flow like sand upon a tide that leached it away into the sea. His mind began to associate things that had no concept shared together, images of his past mixed with feelings and urges that were foreign to his young life, indeed, to any born of Earth. The phantasm drew close. While his eyes refused to take it in, Shy could feel, could almost trace its outlines in the fragmenting of reality around it. As the distorted intelligence began to reach into him, there was no other word for it, his soul. The young human began to feel a scream build within himself, a primal cry of no, denying the removal of his existence. Before the rending shriek that the youngster was sure would tear him apart could get out of his constricted throat, Shy could see through the distortion that was before him a soft glow of amber light filling the crannies of the shaftway. His eyes drawn away from that which he could not truly see, his ears could hear a soft sound of voices coming from the doorways of the Chai-Halub dorms. A crooning rumble that soothed and contented the fragmenting soul that remained in the human's corporeal shell. In the corner of his vision, Gwingahai came forward, holding before her Cogi'yim scarecrow, its amber light joining with that of others as his friend sang her soft chant. From each dorm, Shy could see a young Halubian, or if there were no children, an adult, holding their scarecrows, each singing the same song. A rising chant that flowed over the mind and the soul like a warm blanket of comfort and contentment. The alien tones rang across the metal bulkheads, filling the space with a sense of peace, of calm. Shy could feel his muscles relaxing, his soul's freshly scarred fragments returning to him, restoring his touch upon reality. As each scarecrow glowed, its eyes shining with the warm yellow light that he could sense. Though he had no idea how he knew, it came from each of the singers, their own energy providing the motive for the Cogi'yim to shine. Before Shy, the phantasm began to draw within itself, retracting its ephemeral limbs from the human's existence. It began to back away, moving towards the walls of the station. The distorted unreality of it repelled by the tiny figure before it. Gwenny came to stand next to her friend, her rumble softly rolling in her chest, as she reached out with her other arm and wrapped her soft tentacles around Shy's right hand. Her left upper orbits took him in, blue and purple and green, all rotating in a scintillating pattern as she led Shy down the shaftway. Other Chihalabians were doing the same, their singing growing in strength as they combined, forming a wall of sound and souls. Before his amazed eyes, he could see each of the Halabians put down their figurines, who in time with the soft chanting that continued from alien throats, began to walk forward, each in its own shambling way, using its given form to advance towards the threatening phantasms. The unreal spirits pressed themselves against the walls. To all intents, it seemed to the young human as though they were afraid of these little figures advancing toward them. Shy watched as the Cogi'yim that Gwenny had painted moved upon the phantasm that had tried to eat his energy. Its loosely jointed head was cocked to one side, as it reached with its wire-bound arms to touch the unreal creature before it. For the first time, he could see the phantasms with his corporeal eyes, as the soft glow that motivated the tiny figurines began to pour across their unreal borders, filling the ghostly apparitions with their yellow warmth. Many of the luminous figures were much like the scarecrows, looking as though they had been pieced together from parts and cast-off bits, misshapen connections of energy thrown together in an existence that seemed random, without intentional design. Shy, shuddering at the vision before him, seeing what he had tried to end his existence, felt a rush of anger and fear that threatened to overwhelm him. Gwingahai's tentacles, wrapped in his own fleshy fingers, kept him grounded, real, connected. The phantasms began to fragment further as the glow overtook them, their parts becoming unconnected until each looked like a tornado of whirling, light-born body parts. Then, each of the little Cogi'yim moved forward to stand in the middle of each of these luminescent whirlwinds, raising its limbs formed of garbage and other cast-offs, and turning their little manufactured bodies in the opposite direction of the phantasm's rotation. As Shy and Gwingahai watched, the parts began to fade, then were flung in all directions, dissipating into motes of desperate photons as they disappeared from view. Soon, all that was left were the little scarecrows, their glowing eyes growing dim as the songs began to fade from Chai-Halub throats, the threat gone. He took in a breath, his ribs cracking with joy of his continued life. Shaking steel, Shy turned to his friend. Winnie, what in the void was that? Orbs swirling with a multiplicity of colors, her mood obviously multifaceted. Gwingahai took a moment before responding. The situation is beyond complicated, Shy. This one does not know where to begin. Her mouth parts twisted, which Shy took for a mixture of embarrassment and chewing over what to say. A deeper voice behind them broke in. My progeny did not know fully what was in store. Indeed, none of the Chai-Halub did, Shy Sorensen. We did not expect that the whole Cogi'yim would be interested in your species at all. They are, after all, we had thought, our spirits and our problem. But there will be much discussion and thought given to what is occurring. But for now, we need to take all the Cogi'yim and make sure the rest of the station is secure. There is great consternation on the human side. Join us, please, Shy Sorensen. Resetting his hand in amongst Gwingahai's phalanges, feeling her smooth flesh intertwined with his own rough calluses. Shy nodded. Hey, Gwynny. Yes, Shy. I think you had better teach me the words of that chant, you think? I think I can figure out how to build the scarecrows." Her mouth parts clacking in ironic amusement, Winnie responded, "Yes, Shy, this one shall teach you. Yes, indeed." The end.